Florence, nice scales here. Everything looks quite good. Notice that there's a little flaw in Photoshop with blues, and sometimes they turn out looking violet. That is no fault of yours. Everything here looks pretty good. The black could be 000, and the white should be 255, 255, 255. Those are RGB values, which you can type into the color picker. In tones, there's a slight shift in value, but on the whole, you have the idea. Now, gradation in hue looks good. That's a fun design. Look at all you've been able to do with just circles. And value works well too. Gradation of saturation is accurate. Doesn't that have the feeling of washed out jeans? Hi Heather, things look very good here. Your scales are almost perfect. You know, the one little flaw I can see there is that your white should be 255, 255, 255, and black 000. Those are RGB, red, green, and blue values that you can type into the color picker. Now, with gradation of hue, the colors are mostly saturated. The violet you're using is not. You're asked fully saturated colors, and those are found in the top right corner of the color picker. Also, with regard to gradation of hue, well, maybe the change could have been slower. Now, gradation of value looks great. And in gradation of saturation, you certainly are shifting the saturation. There's one more matter to contend with, though. You're asked to keep the value fixed, so your work should be similar to the tones scale. Hi Nicole, this looks pretty good. I can see in scales you have the idea. Now, one thing that you're asked to do is to start with the same color at the left in all three scales, and I can see just looking without testing that those blues are not quite identical, and that's just a matter of getting accustomed to Photoshop and using the color picker or Illustrator if that's what you're using. Now, in tints, you are meant to end in white. You definitely have the idea for tints, but there shouldn't be any gray there. It should just go from blue to white, adding more and more white with no gray added. And with shades, you're only adding black, and you should end in a pure black, which is 000. Tones looks okay. Okay, looking at the gradation of hue, well, you know, one thing you're meant to do is to keep the hues fully saturated, and when we see tints and shades, those colors are desaturated. Also, a gradation is a gradual transition, which isn't so apparent here. On the other hand, the gradation of value looks good, and so does saturation. Hi, Kimberly. Your scales look very good. There is just a little imperfection in the white in tints. Other than that, I'd say they're just about perfect. Let's see, looking at gradation of hue, well, the peach color there is not going to be fully saturated. I think on the whole you have the idea. Now, you are being very liberal in your interpretation of circles, and I do want you guys to follow the directives in the assignments. So a circle is not the same as an ellipse, right? You have to depress, shift, and constrain proportions to make perfect circles. Your gradation of value looks great. Overlooking the ellipses there, and maybe the stroke too. And gradation in saturation looks good with constant value. Hi Yolanda, I'm happy to see this set of scales from you. Excellent job getting the leftmost squares to be identical in hue. Let's see. You have the right idea here, and I can see that you're eyeballing this, which is probably the way I do it myself. Let's see, in tints, you know, you only want to add white and not black, so that second square looks like black's been added. You just want to add a teeny bit of white, working your way all the way to the right where, you know, this square is pure white. In shades, you don't want to have any white in there. You just want to be adding black. I think you're getting the gist here. And with tones, you're just adding more and more gray. So looking at this, I can see I have the general idea, but your technique needs a little perfecting. Well, hi Trish. I was looking for an outstanding example of scales, and yours was the one out of two classes that seemed to stand out. Excellent work there. Now, for gradation and hue, well, to find fully saturated colors, go to the top right corner of the color picker. These colors are saturated, but they're not fully saturated, and your shapes aren't circles. I want you to work within the parameters of the assignment. So we also have a problem then with value. Your value, your colors, and the job building this, why all of that looks fine. In fact, it was quite a task to create this image, I'm sure. However, it doesn't properly meet the assignment. I need you to stick to the assignment in future. Now, let's see, gradation and saturation there. Once more, you have the idea. I did the grayscale test, and the values aren't exactly identical. Tara, I can see you have the idea here with these scales. One little problem is all three boxes that left are meant to be identical. So the one that you start with shades with, well, that one is not the same as the other two. And you're right to end in white on top and black in middle with shades and gray at the bottom. But your interval could use a little finessing here. And I know that the software is hard to use at first, but with practice, you'll get very handy with it. Hi, Jacqueline. Things look really good here. Your scales look quite right. With regard to hue, I think that that's a really nice solution. I know you're struggling with resolution, and I'm glad you're starting with 300 pixels per inch. I want you to just watch how you save for web, and we'll take a look at your newer work. This gradation of value is an excellent idea, and gradation of saturation is quite good too. I know I've lost a little resolution in making the copy of your work, but I did refer to the original in reviewing. Well, Amy, things look pretty good here. I can see that you have the idea with the scales. Your white and your black at the ends of tints and shades should be 255, 255, 255 for the white, and 000 for the black. These are numbers that you type into the RGB areas in the color picker so you can get the perfect white or black. Gradation of hue looks okay. Perhaps your file was not started at 300 pixels per inch. That's something to look out for in future, especially if you're using curves. I know I've lost a little resolution here in making a copy of your art, but I did look to the original. With gradation of value, things look good. If you see a purplishness, that is the fault of Photoshop. I can see that you picked from the same blue for all of your colors. Gradation of saturation is good. Adoniel, hello. Taking a look at your scales here, I can see you have the idea. I noticed that the blues at the left sides of the scales aren't all matching, and that's something that we did want to go for. There's a slight variation in value in tones, but I can see you have the idea. Now your gradation in hue looks quite good, accepting the fact that you were supposed to use circles only. I think you're getting the knack. I can see that assignment 4, what you've done for it, looks more proficient than what you got for assignment 3, so you are on your way. Well, hello, Milana. You are doing some fantastic work here. Looking at scales, I can see you have the idea down. The leftmost blocks in the scales don't match precisely, though they do look pretty close. On right, also, we want to have a perfect white and a perfect black. You can type the appropriate RGB values into the color picker. That's 000 for black and 255, 255, 255 for the RGB values in white. Excellent with your gradation of hue. This is a beautiful piece. And the same is true with gradation of value. Gradation of saturation shows excellent control of value. There's just a little bit of trouble with resolution in these. It's minimal, but it makes the files just a touch less than portfolio worthy. So I want you to study up on tutorials and also make sure that you're beginning with 300 pixels per inch.